Okay. Go ahead.
All right. I've told you that in one's career, you always have those dry moments. It happens to everybody. And this was, again, one of those dry moments. Joy and I are married. We're at this home in Studio City, and I haven't worked again for quite a while. And I get this phone call. Father Elwood Kaiser, Franciscan priest, does a show on Sundays called Insight. And he would have a lot of the people in the industry, famous people, writers and directors and actors, do the show. And he would pay minimum, right, for it. So he called and he wanted me to play one of the Italian priests in a show, like an Italian boys' town in Italy, with a wonderful actor playing the other priest, Don Gordon, who was in Bullet with Steve McQueen. Terrific actor, Don Gordon. So he says, we paid $350. So I said, oh, terrific, because we didn't have any food in the house. We were running out of food. I had this little Corvair that I was driving, and so I said, this is great. We'll get the check. They said, now, Jamie, just be careful. The last day of shooting, Father Kaiser will come down in front of everybody, and he'll hand you the check. And he expects a lot of people to say, no, that's all right, Father, you keep it, see? So he says, this is what you got to do. When he hands you the check in front of everybody, you just say, no, that's all right, Father, you keep it. And he'll say, no, Jamie, I want you to have it. And you'll say, no, that's all right. And he says, no, I want you to have it. On the third one, take the check. So he says, okay, you got it. So it's the final day of shooting. It's late at night. Joy's at her house in Studio City. She's got the kitchen light on in the back because she's waiting for that check. We don't have any groceries in the house for food for the house. So here we are. Final, that's it. That's a wrap. Okay, very good. Father Kaiser comes down. He says, Jamie, here's your check. I said, no, Father, that's all right. You keep it. He says, all right. He didn't go to the third one. I have no money. I swear to you, when I drove that Corvair up that driveway, my wife knew just by the sound of that engine that he didn't get the money. She came out and gave me this look. You got the check, right? I said, yeah, you got the check. Now, the other time, the same thing with this Corvair. Jerry Lewis was dear friends with Father Kaiser. So he'd have this big party at his house in Bel Air for all the actors and writers and directors that had done Insight. So we go, oh boy, we're going to go up to Jerry Lewis's house. He lives in Bel Air and everything else. And of course, we didn't want to be conspicuous because we had this little old Corvair, see? So people were parking their cars up there, their Cadillacs, Rolls Royces, Lincolns, and everything else. So they had valet service. Well, Joy and I said, we'll just kind of park here and try not to be noticed in anything. And he said, right. So, and then those days, again, they had the stiletto high heels on, and my wife was wearing the high heels. So we pull up in our Corvair, and everybody's up on the side of the hill. It's summertime, and people are having drinks and hors d'oeuvres and everything else. So we got out of the car. We don't want to be conspicuous, whatever. Then the valets start to take the car. Well, the brake doesn't work, and he lived on the side of a hill. So that's when the car's going backwards down the hill. And you got these three valet guys and my wife with those stiletto high heels and me trying to hold the car. Well, everybody up there is looking to see what the heck's going on. By the time we finished, my wife's heels were about that tall trying to stop the car. We were the most conspicuous people at that event, I got to tell you. Good stories.
That's great. So now, circling back to Klinger.
Yes.
Describe the character of Klinger for us.
Well, it's rather complex when you say describe the character of Klinger. He was many things many times over. They had a tough time. They were trying to nail him down and try to figure out, well, who is it? I mean, to take a one joke thing, which is a guy wearing a dress, and turn it into 11 seasons, it takes a lot of ingenuity on their part and a lot of ingenuity on my part to keep the character alive. What they tried to do, Klinger was a good soldier. He always did his job as a corpsman. But what he was trying to do was to get out of the Army the way he wanted to get out of the Army. not by any means that would be disgraceful. He would always come up with some gimmick to get out. And that was so wonderful. And Alan Arbus, who played the psychiatrist Friedman, would come in and do an analysis of him, And if he'd say something to Klinger, we'd say, "Okay, you can get out this way." Klinger said, "No, I'm not getting out that way. I got to get out my way. I'm not gonna. That's disgusting the way you want me to get out." So he was a good soldier, and he never shirked his duty. You could always count on him if he was given an assignment to do. So. And also what they did is they gave him different things besides wearing the dress. Try to eat his way out where he'd gain weight, or try to sweat his way out, try to fly his way off with a hang glider, try to immolate himself, with gasoline. He tried to. I'm trying to think of some of the other things that he did, where he tried to convince the colonel that he was a gypsy, and that he worked voodoo, and they were just wonderful things that they come up with that were silly, but at the same time were acceptable because he could get away with it. And I think that's what made it so much fun, because the writers and the actors always enjoyed whatever they were coming up with. It was entertaining, not only from the standpoint of the characters, it was entertaining for us cast members. What the heck are they going to do with this guy next?
What were his strengths and weaknesses?
Well, I think his strength was, as I said, he was a good soldier. He never shirked his duty. And if you needed him, he was there for you. And I always like to say that he was actually the placard. He was the visibility in protest to the war that Hawkeye, Trapper, and BJ were in quips, in words that they used. He was more visual. He showed you his disapproval by the outfits that he wore and the things that he did, where the other guys were very clever with their comments and quips that they made about the war. So he was a fun character. I really enjoyed him. And he had a heart. He always was very, very kind to people if somebody was in trouble or something like that. And they made some nice moments for him, too. They didn't just make him just this one-dimensional character. They gave him little moments. I remember there was one time when with David Ogden Steyer's Charleston Emerson Winchester III, and he takes a cap to him at the end of a scene and hands it to him. It was something that he had worn when he was a kid, Charles Emerson Winchester. And he says, "Thank you, Max." And I think Max says, "You're welcome, Charles." Just that little moment where they're human beings and not officers and enlisted men or crazy Klinger and the snobby Winchester. And they'd come up with things like that in the show that were just terrific balances. I remember Loretta Swit tells me all the time she won her Emmy for a show called Birthday Girls. I think Karen Hall wrote that one. It's where she and I go off. I'm driving the Jeep, and the Jeep breaks down, and find out it's her birthday, and Klinger has a little cupcake with a little candle in it, and they become buddies now all of a sudden, and they become friends, and they had some nice moments, some really friendly moments, just two people talking to one another, not Major Houlihan and Corporal Klinger, this goofball, but just two people, two friends talking.
And she won an Emmy for that.
Yeah, she did win an Emmy. She thanks me all the time. I was nominated, I think, one time. That was it. There was so many good actors on that show. I mean, how do you could have given a nomination to anybody and everybody on it? They were all wonderful. I think Alan won, Harry Morgan. I think Gary might have, Radar might have won, and I think Loretta did. So they were all absolutely wonderful. There wasn't a bad actor in that whole gang. They were just great.
And in what ways are you like Klinger, and in what ways are you different?
I don't think I'm as heroic as Klinger. I don't think I could do the things that he did. Certainly wear those outfits and do the outrageous things. I'm more withdrawn than that. But I think the heart and soul of him that's who I am. That's I think what makes the character work. Is that I have a kindness and I have a gentility and I have I like human beings, and I think that was the heart and soul of the character, even though he had this veneer, this facade that was on. So I enjoy life. I try to, at any rate, and enjoy each day. So I think that's probably something I have in common with him, or that he has with me. Wait a minute, I played him. He didn't play me. That's right, isn't it? I did play him. He didn't play me. Okay.
How did Klinger evolve over the series?
I think the writers kept saying, what can we do so we don't do the same joke over and over again? Because that's pretty hard. If you just did one, if the character didn't have any dimension, the character wouldn't have lasted. Because how many times can you get a laugh at a guy walking in with the dress on? I mean, once you've seen it, you've seen it. So I think they were just wonderful how they kept adding things to him. Sometimes they didn't even pay any attention to what he was wearing, and you just hear what he had to say. Or he had a problem, or somebody else had a problem, and he was trying to help them with their problem. So I think they were the writers and the producers were just brilliant. How they developed all the characters. I'm grateful for them. I mean, that's a long run, and it couldn't have happened without their guidance.
Now, Klinger eventually stopped wearing dresses. How did that happen, and were you
Well, they
involved?
decided once they always replaced somebody with somebody else in the show. First person to leave would have been Trapper John, Wayne Rogers, and McLean Stevenson, and Henry Blake. So then they brought in Colonel Potter, and they brought in Harry Morgan. They brought in Mike Farrell, B.J. Honeycutt. Then they decided, okay, then Larry Linville wanted to leave. So then they brought in Charles Emerson Winchester III, David Ogden Stiers. And then Gary decided to leave. Well, they kept saying, well, you can't bring in somebody that's equivalent to, he was so special. That character was just absolutely wonderful, the way Gary played it. So they decided, why don't we just take Jamie and make him the company clerk rather than bring in another actor? Let him make the transformation. So that's what they did, and it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed doing it, and I was a little nervous at first. I thought, oh my goodness, they're taking away my gimmick. Will I be okay doing this? And they were wonderful. The stuff that they came up with, the things I decorated the office with, and the silly stuff, my imaginary camel that I had, and they did all kinds of great things to keep the character interesting.
Now, Klinger's wedding dress got a lot of use. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
My wedding dress got a lot of use. I'm trying to think of that. That was...
I believe it was worn by you and a couple other people.
You mean other famous people?
No, in the show.
Oh, in the show. I'm trying to remember. You know, you got me on that one. I had a couple of different outfits. The one that I remember was the one where I was supposed to get married to Laverne Esposito. And... that one, then I got a divorce. I don't remember that one, how many different people. Loretta certainly didn't wear it in her. Did she wear it? I don't remember. When she got married to Penobscot. I don't think so.
But I think Soon Lee wore it.
Oh,
Right?
Soon Lee. You're talking about the final. Oh, yes. Now I remember. You know, that show, sometimes you want to forget that Goodbye, Farewell, Amen, because that was such a... That was the termination of the series, and sometimes I try not to think of that because that was pretty sad. And I got to tell you, that was probably the worst week that we ever spent because we were covered by so much press, newspapers, magazines, television, radio, and then still having to do a show while we were doing that. But as you know, that was not the last episode. The last episode was a show called Time Capsule. We had already shot Goodbye, Farewell, Amen. And what happened was the ranch caught on fire during the filming of that episode. And we actually were filming at night and had to get out of there because the Malibu fire was coming across. And we got out just in time, and it burnt the set. It melted Jeeps and tanks and trucks that we had there. So they had to rebuild the set, and they went to Lake Sherwood, where the golf course is now. Jack Nicklaus was building a golf course there. And so we replicated the tents in our MASH unit and shot the final scenes of Goodbye, Farewell, Amen at Lake Sherwood, where the golf course is now, where recently Tiger Woods won. So that's where that happened. The last episode, called Time Capsule, was the one where we decided that we were going to take some of our memorabilia, our things that we had, and put it in a box, watertight box, and bury it so that anybody that came to Korea someday might find it, find our little notes that we wrote and everything else. Well, I got this idea. I said, hey, guys, why don't we take some of our things that we have for real, put it in one of these watertight Red Cross boxes, and bury it on the lot at 20th Century Fox, and maybe 25, 30 years later, tell everybody about it. Be a great story. So they said, yes, you're right. So what do? We'll figure out what we want to leave in this box, and we'll do it at nighttime after everybody's left the studio. And we'll dig a hole, and we'll bury it there. So we tried to figure out where was the best place to bury the thing. We thought, well, right near the commissary, because we figured the commissary would always be stationary. And very late at night, and Alan Alda's wife, Arlene, had her camera. She's a terrific photographer. And we had champagne. We brought out some nice champagne, and a friend of ours, one of the prop guys, dug a hole, big hole there. And we had this ceremony, just as in the last episode, where we placed these things in this soon-to-be watertight Red Cross box. And we said something about them, put them in, toasted with champagne, put all the things in, put the box, closed it up, put the box in the soil, covered it up. We had some shovels, everybody covered it up. And Arlene Alda took photographs of all this. We all toasted. And we said, isn't that great? Some years later, we're going to let everybody know that time capsule has been placed there. And you'll have all of our things from MASH. End of the series, they decide to renovate the studio. So what do you think they do? A bulldozer comes through, goes right through the area where we had buried the time capsule. Guy didn't know what the heck it was and tossed it away. So that's the end of that story. That happened very shortly after that. But I think Arlene Alda, Alan's wife, still has photographs of us burying that time capsule. We thought it was a great idea. Sorry, I wish I could say it's still there, and after this interview, we'll go and dig it up. Long gone.
Do you remember what you put in it?
No, I don't. Probably some of the things that he wore. You know what I still have from the show? I still have the fuzzy pink slippers that I wore when I flew over the compound, and I have a pair of big Mary Janes that I wore when I was Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz with my dog Toto. I tried to get out. We have a curio upstairs. I still have. And I have a couple other little items that I took from the show.
So, and the title of that time capsule episode was "As Time Goes By." Is that right?
I'm not sure. You probably know it better than I do. Yeah, but I remember we thought that what a great idea that was. Oh, wouldn't that be a wonderful story?
Let's try. So now, was Klinger originally from Toledo, or was that something that happened?
Yes, what happened was Larry Galbart, who, when he was a student at Fairfax High School, in high school, he wanted to be a writer. And Larry's father, Harry Galbart, was a prominent barber in town. And every comedian went to Harry Gelbart to get their hair cut. Harry Ritz, Milton Berle, Danny Thomas. Back to Danny Thomas again, see? So Harry says to Danny, my son is a very funny guy. And blah, blah. Danny says, all right, let's see some of his jokes. So Larry brings some jokes. Larry's in high school. Danny reads, these are good, I'll use them. Danny uses the jokes. So there gave Larry Gelbart his first professional writing credit, okay? So I think what Larry did, and as you know, Larry went on to write the Sid Caesar show, a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum, the Sly Fox, Tootsie, I mean, all kinds of things that Larry did. So I think what he did is, to pay back Danny, he made Klinger Lebanese and made him from Toledo. So that was a little subtle payback to Danny Thomas. And that's how Klinger. And then also Gene Reynolds was originally from Cleveland, Ohio. So he thought, it used to be in movies, if somebody mentioned Toledo, it'd get a big laugh. I think it still does if you mention it. I don't know why, but it does. So they added a little extra laugh to the character.
And you reference many Toledo locations. Can you talk about a few of those?
Yeah, well, one of them, of course, was the Mud Hens, and that came about. Ken Levine and David Isaacs, who are writers on the show. Ken grew up in an area where the Mud Hens used to play. Ken today, I believe, works for the L.A. Dodgers. He does some broadcasting for them. And so they thought that, why not have the Toledo Mud Hens his favorite team? I mean, first of all, who would name a team Mud Hens? There's no other team in the world named the Mud Hens. There are Panthers, Tigers, Lions, Indians, Cowboys. A mud hen is a swamp bird, a coot, because Toledo is built on a swamp. So they thought that's perfect for Klinger. So we notified the people in Toledo, and they were great. They sent us, stuff to use on the show. And so I made the Mud Hens famous. They're the farm team of the Detroit Tigers. And actually, Casey Stengel managed the Mud Hens at one time and won their lower division of their World Series when Casey Stengel was the manager of the Mud Hens. And then I brought in the hot dog place in Toledo, Paco's, because it was on the east side of Toledo, Hungarian family, and we couldn't go in. It was a beer joint, so we'd send the oldest in, and they'd get the hot dogs, and we'd eat those, and they were like 35 cents or something like that. And so I just happened to mention them, and eventually the script writers decided to start writing them into the script, and actually used their logo and made a set of the front of their store that was back there in Toledo. And so that's how that came about. And we used to fly in the hot dogs and serve them in the mess tent. I used to be a big hockey fan. I saw the Miracle on Ice with the U.S. team beating the Russian team. I was at Lake Placid at that time. Got to know all the Olympic players, and I became a big hockey fan. And so we used to have hockey teams come and watch our show being shot, and then I have these hot dogs flown in, and we'd eat them after the shooting of the day. And I'd had the New York Islanders with Mike Bossy and everybody there. I had the LA Kings with Marcel Dion there. The Edmonton Oilers with Wayne Gretzky. I got to meet Wayne when Wayne was, I used to play Edmonton, Canada a lot in dinner theaters. So he was a good friend, and I had pictures of them, of everybody serving hot dogs and enjoying themselves. So that's how that came about.
Did you have much input into Klinger's character traits?
I could, if I wanted to, yes. If I never challenged them that much. One of the things that I did do, and I remember saying to them, when we had our reading around the table, they would always say, well, would anybody like to say anything about their characters or anything else going on? And they would bring up things, and then the writers would debate it, and the cast members would, and then they'd do some rewrites of it. And then once that rewrite was done, then you had to do the script the way it was written. Nobody ad-libbed. You had to do it that way. So what was a time when they had Klinger, he was supposed to be standing guard duty, and they had him falling asleep. And I said, no, you can't do that. That would be the wrong thing to do. So I said, rather than that, let's not have him on guard duty. Let somebody else be on guard duty. So they agreed with that. Because you don't want to show that. That defeats what I told you about. He was always a good soldier. You could always count on him. So things like that. And of course, a lot of times we'd say, gee, that line, I wouldn't say that. I think Bill Christopher would say that line. Or Alan Alda would say, no, I think Klinger would say that line. Or somebody, we throw lines around, give lines back to somebody or give lines to somebody. It was a very unique cast. They were very generous with their characters and the lines that they had. Now, we did a couple of ad-lib shows. That one was the one called The Reporter with Cleet Roberts. That was the ad-lib show where Larry Gelbart went around with a tape recorder, and he'd ask us questions as our character, and we'd answer them. And then he'd make a transcript, and then we tried to replicate that when they shot it. But that won the Peabody Award. Then we did another one that was totally ad-lib, is where I'm showing a movie, and the projector keeps breaking down, so everybody has to get up and entertain or do something. That was totally ad-libbed. I don't know what show that's been on television that's a series that could possibly have the faith in their actors and everyone to do a totally ad-lib show, but that was done.
So you just mentioned the interview, the one where you all are interviewed.
Yes, that's right.
So how much of your ad-libbing did you pull from your own life experiences?
I pulled all of it from my life growing up back in Toledo. It was the only thing, because I didn't know that much about Klinger. I mean, they'd add things, like his parents or something here and there, bits and pieces. He wasn't a defined character the way Hawkeye was or the way Major Houlihan was. They came from the book. So they had a background to them. Well, mine was created on the spot, and then they would add to it, embroider it. And so it was kind of hard for me to try to put a complete character together. I had to use whatever it was that I knew of from my childhood. So that's what we did. And, of course, some of the great moments, Bill Christopher as Father Mulcahy, talking about keeping his hands warm from the steam from the bodies, and gosh, Alan Alda's lines that he had, and Harry Morgan, they were just absolutely brilliant. The dialogue was remarkable.
Yeah. Did you have any idea at the time that you were creating such an iconic character?
Nope. I didn't even think the show was going to be what it was. And I remember one day, I'm trying to think what year it was. Larry Gelbart said, get ready, because we're the next I Love Lucy, meaning the reruns. And he was right. Yeah. No, you don't. When you're doing that, you don't have any idea of that. And you don't go in with the idea that, yes, aren't we these wonderful people giving out these great messages. We're so dearly loved by everybody. You go in, it's a job. You try to do the best you can. You take the material and you say, okay, what is it? How can I convince you that this is what we're trying to do? And you do it.
Let's talk a little bit about the production itself. Describe a typical week in the show's production.
The typical week was supposed to be this. You get the script. You read the script, and they allowed this. They didn't allow it with many other shows, if any shows at all, where then you could have a day of rehearsal so that the camera operator would be there, the director of photography, and the cast and our director, and then you would block certain scenes, all right, with existing Radar's office, the swamp, the mess tent, the operating room. And then all the writers and the producers would come down at the end of the day, and the director would show them the bits and pieces of the scenes that they were going to do. And you'd say, okay, and then the next day you would start shooting. And you would have to shoot it in 3 days. So that means on a Monday, you do the read-through around the table, do the rehearsal. Then you'd shoot Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday, you'd get the new script, and then you'd start all over again. Well, as it turned out, we never got to Friday. What we do is you take scenes and you'd bank them. You'd say, okay, it's the end of the week. We haven't done Radar's Office and we haven't done the Swamp. So let's hold on to those 2 scenes that we have there, and we'll start the next show on Monday. So then you'd go on Monday and you'd start the new show, and then supposedly again you'd supposed to finish. We didn't finish it. So what they do come Friday again, when they keep another of Radar's Office and another the Swamp. So they build enough of shooting schedule so that you'd have a pickup day. So we might be doing a pickup day that had 4 or 5 different shows, but maybe 4 or 5 different scenes in the Swamp, 4 or 5 different scenes in Radar's Office, and then you cut them into the segments that they had. But we never finished the show. I doubt if we finished the show in 5 days. And they were a little skeptical at first, but the show was so good, the quality was so good that they allowed us to do this. I'm sure Mr. Reynolds and Mr. Gelbart and Mr. Alda and everybody fought for that quality and they allowed us to do it because the show was a big winner for 20th Century Fox.
Can you talk a little bit about working with Larry Gelbart?
Oh, Larry was wonderful. He was so imaginative and quick. And what I liked about Larry, and I learned something very good about Larry, if something was really funny, he'd write something in the script that was funny, and he'd get a huge laugh. He'd look at the scene overall and he'd go, you know what? That's a wrong place for that laugh. Very few writers would do this. Let's take that joke out of there. It's hurting the scene, what we want to say. And he'd save that joke, if it was that good a joke, and put it someplace else at a more appropriate time. He was that generous with his creativity. It didn't work there. Take it out. It's funny. We can always use it again. And I learned that from him, that if it's the wrong note, don't put it in the song. Don't put it in the music.
Let's talk about the cast. I'll just give you a name. You give me a thought about them. Start with Alan Alda.
Oh, Alan, of course, was the spine of the show. He could write, he could direct, he could act, he could produce. He was very generous. Originally, it was an ensemble, but as the show went on, Alan became, as they say, the linchpin. I know they come up with all these things that we have to use. So, but he was very, very generous about the show, making sure that everybody, as Burt Metcalf used to say, I got 7 birdies I got to feed, Sometimes I can't do it in every show. So sometimes I'll feed a little more of the birdies in this show, and then in the next show I'll give the other birdies the thing. And we were all very well aware of that. And Alan was very generous and brought so much to the show. His talent, his camaraderie, and fun. That's the other thing. Remember, I told you there are certain people that you enjoy working with them. You can't wait to get to work. And that's what that entire cast had. You couldn't wait. You'd go home at night and your sides would be hurting from laughing and couldn't wait to get up the next morning to go to work. And I think because Alan supposedly, quote, was the star of the show, so thrown by CBS and 20th Century Fox, I don't think he knew that was going to happen, but that's the way it worked out. He made it so much fun to come to work. Wayne Rogers, same thing. Wayne was an absolute delight. He and Alan got along fabulously. Great rapport that they had with one another. But then again, Wayne felt that, hey, it was an ensemble show, and that he felt that the writers were going a little too heavy on Hawkeye and not enough on Trapper John, and he really wanted to leave and do something else. But the two of them were not enemies, Alan and Wayne. To this day, they're still dear friends. It was just a career thing for Wayne to do. McLean Stevenson, what a joy to work with. So much fun. Again, he could he could sit with you and come up with comedy, just talking about something, and have everybody laughing on the floor with his great imagination. And he was fun to work with. He was one of the guys. Not only was Henry Blake one of the guys, but Mac was also one of the guys. And a very fine actor. I think he was underrated as an actor, as Colonel Blake. And of course, Larry Linville was absolutely brilliant as Major Burns. Larry is a terrific actor, and he was so unlike Major Burns. Larry actually, I think, had a degree in aerodynamics, or he could build he could build gliders. He could do things. He was very, very, very smart man. He was like an engineer, totally unlike Major Burns. Very intelligent man, and a lot of fun. Gary Berghoff was an absolute delight. He brought that great charm to Radar. The teddy bear, the cuddliness, the naivete. I'm having a tough time talking now. His grape knee high, all the wonderful, charming things that he brought to that character. It was pretty hard to lose him. He brought a little something special to the show that none of the other characters had. And of course, Loretta, as Major Houlihan, was absolutely sensational. The thing about Loretta, and I always tell her this, is that she was one of the guys, just like Mac was. You never had to wait for her. If the camera was ready, as most female stars, they'll be primping and the hair and the thing and that. She was ready. Boy, let's go. She was right there, and she could trade quips with you just like any guy could. She was terrific. Never had to wait for Lorette. And of course, Bill Christopher, how charming. We'd always make fun of Bill the way he talked. With that high voice, and then we do imitations of Bill. He brought so much to Father Mulcahy. He brought humor to him. He brought gentility, kindness. As I said, they were all wonderful actors. And then the replacements, Mike Farrell and David Ogden Stiers, each in their own way brought something special to the show. And how brilliant Harry Morgan, how brilliant. Harry was the father figure. He's passed away, and we've all been, through the internet, exchanging thoughts about our friend and how meaningful he was to us as individuals and to the show and to the cast. We had so many great stories about him. He was like a father figure for us. So, excuse me, my stomach is growling. I must be thinking of the food we ate in the mess tent.
Did you have any favorite episodes?
Dude, I had a lot of favorite scenes. It's pretty hard. I mean, most people say the interview is like the best one. Could you answer that?
So you were about to say something about the interview, your favorite episode.
I think there's a lot of favorite scenes that I have from different episodes. It's hard after all those shows to say, oh, that was my favorite show. Because then you'd see something at another show and you go, gee, wasn't that scene great? And that's why I don't really pick a show in particular. The only reason I think everybody brings that particular show up, the one with Cleet Roberts, is because it was so unique. I don't think no one had done a show like that where you made a transcript of talk to the characters, ad-libbing with them, and then actually putting it into a script and asking them to try to replicate that while you're shooting. So I think that one itself, and of course it was based on Edward R. Murrow visiting Korea, and Cleet Roberts was a wonderful reporter. So I think that one becomes the favorite for most people. It was done in black and white, a two-parter, and won the Peabody Award. So it has a lot of credentials. But there's so many different scenes that I have. So many funny scenes, silly scenes, so many poignant scenes, tender scenes. The one we talk about quite often is the one it was called Old Soldiers, I think. And because I bring it up because of Harry's passing away, Harry Morgan. And it's a show that Dennis Koenig wrote called The Old Soldiers. It was about a tontine. And it's about Colonel Potter. He puts on his World War I outfit, and he gets this package, and we don't know what it is. And he unravels the package, and it's a bottle of brandy, cognac. And he said, my friends, when we first all went in, we got this bottle of brandy. I forgot how many friends that there were. And he said, the person who outlives them all is the one who has the brandy, the cognac. And I'm the one, so I want to share it now with my current friends. Well, I got to tell you, to watch Harry do that scene, Colonel Potter, everybody was in tears. We couldn't go through that scene with them because we knew he was talking to us. And Harry was also using all the actors that he'd worked with that had passed on, that he dearly loved. And I remember the writers, producers all came down to watch that scene. It was so difficult. We're all trying to find it and just run it. It was so beautiful the way he did that. But there were those moments, that kind of moment, and where we used also our real lives to convey what our characters were trying to say. And that was one of those magical moments. And it's great that it's on film. Yeah. You can go to it and see it.
And now you mentioned earlier that you also directed an episode of MASH.
I directed. I did one of the episodes. I had a great time doing it. I loved it. I enjoyed the directing, and I told you I had gone to school to learn how to, and they finally let me do it. I think it was Alan Alda and Mike Farrell that convinced the producers, let the guy direct. And I got it in on time, and I got some great shots out of it. And I enjoyed it. And I wish I could have done more. It was toward the end of the series, so I couldn't have, everybody was starting to direct there. Mike Farrell was directing, David Ogden Stiers was directing, of course, Burt Metcalf, Charlie Dubin, Gene Reynolds had left the show, Larry Gelbart had left the show, they used to direct. So it was a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I would have liked to have had a career doing it, but I found out, too, that you got to be careful in this business. You don't want to confuse the audience. Are you a director or are you an actor? And I didn't want to make the segue to the transition to being just a director directing television episodes. I enjoyed acting.
And how did your fellow castmates react to you being
They
a director?
were wonderful, absolutely cooperative. Again, it's very difficult for me, too, because now I have to ask them to do certain things. But they were wonderful. And the camera operator, the director of photography, they were just terrific. Of course, been doing the show so long, we knew what to do. We knew the kind of intercutting that they liked. But the pieces of business and the relationships that you might add to it to give it a little flavoring, that was a lot of fun.
And then in 1983, MASH came to an end. How did you find out it was ending?
We all agreed to it. We decided that how do you keep fresh stories after 11 years? We repeated many of the stories, and how do you not wear out our welcome? We knew that it was time. We couldn't say anything more about the war. We were on longer than the war was, so it was a mutual thing. We decided that it was time, and it was very difficult to say goodbye. Because the working conditions were so wonderful and the scripts were great. It was a good job. But everything has to come to an end, so we knew it was time for us to move on. But I'll tell you what, even after all these years, it's so vivid in my mind, and we're all such friends. We've all talked to one another. We're all in touch. We know where everybody is. We know what's happening in their lives. So it really hasn't come to an end. It's come to a television end, but it hasn't come to a friendship end.
That's nice. Were you surprised by the ratings of the final episode?
Yes, I was. I was surprised. Actually, what we did is we decided that we were going to see this show before the rest of the country did at the little theater on the Fox lot. And we brought all of our families in. We saw the show, and then we went to a Middle Eastern restaurant in Westwood that we got the restaurant for the night for all of us with our families. And we had the best time having food while the rest of the world watched the show and having drinks and having napkin fights and all kinds of silly things. And then, of course, we found out the ratings of it. We were overwhelmed by it. And it would have held up, you know. But you got Super Bowls and you've got all these kinds. But it's still the most viewed TV show in the history. You know, special events obviously will take precedent. But I don't think another series book show will ever have the ratings that we had.
And are you surprised at how popular it still is?
Yes, I am. But then again, I remember Larry Gelbart. Hey, we're the next I Love Lucy. So he was very profound. Prophetic. He knew that was we were arriving at that. It's still on. And I can't tell you how many young people come up to me and say how they've discovered the show and how much they enjoy it.
And did you like the finale? What did you think of the finale?
Yes, I thought it was excellent. I thought they did a great wrap-up on all of it. Some people thought it got a little too dramatic in certain areas, and I just had a lot of faith in all of our writers and our producers and our director, Alan, and that they knew how to guide us. And you can criticize anything, obviously. Could have been better here, could have been funnier there, could have been whatever it is. But I thought overall it's a terrific show. It wraps up everybody's life. And of course the fun thing is that who winds up in Korea? The guy who wanted to get out the most. You know, the irony of it. She's wonderful. Rosalind Chow played Soon Lee. She was terrific.
And what do you think is MASH's legacy?
I think quality is a great word to use. It was a show that didn't talk down to its audience. There have been a lot of popular shows, and they would the jokes in them, the characters in them. MASH, as I think who was it? Was it Robert Wood who was the head of the network at that time? It used to be called the Tiffany Network. CBS was, and he said MASH is our crown jewel. And I think that's really what it is. It was so well done. It had such integrity. And I'm not trying to sound pompous. I mean, obviously it was commercial, too. You have to have commerciality. You can't be on the air. But I think it was just the way everybody approached it. The actors really wanted to do the best they could. The writers did the same thing. The camera work, the lighting of it. Everybody wanted to leave a legacy of quality behind them. And I think we often talk about that as our cast members when we get together. And we say, you know, that was a good show, wasn't it? And we're quite proud of it. The storylines, you know, sometimes there were things, to try to do a weekly series is very difficult. And for the amount of quality and good shows that we did, I think it's amazing after 11 years. We did some stinkers, too, I'm sure. You have to do them. But, gee, some of the clever things they did. The one where the fellow's going to die, you know, and they put the clock at the bottom of the thing. That was pretty darn good. The other one where they did where the person, the patient, is the camera. We did one where there was no cuts in it. you did, whatever the reel of film was, 10 minutes or something. We did 10 minutes, no cuts. And then the next group was another 10 minutes, whatever we did. So that means, I remember when we were doing it, I think Charlie Dubin directed that one, where I was the first person in the, I think it was in the post-op, and I had something with an x-ray or whatever it is, and then I leave, and then somebody else goes out, and there are no cuts. There will be no cuts in this, just camera movement. And then I was the last person to come in. So I had to be right on the money on my mark and my lines, because if I goofed, I had to do the whole thing all over again. And if you don't think I wasn't sweating bullets back, before I came on camera, I go, please, Lord, let me have the lines right. Let me hit my mark. Otherwise, everybody's got to do the whole thing all over again. But they did a lot of clever things. It was terrific. It was a lot of fun doing the show. I'm glad we're doing this interview. It's making me happy.
Excellent. Now, Klinger came back to life in Aftermash.
Yes.
How did that come about?
That came about, and that could be the sorriest thing we ever did. Somebody had the great idea that we should do what happens to them afterwards. And I had seen a movie called The Best Years of Our Lives. I'd watched that many, many times. And I thought, wow, what a great movie that is, showing the service people coming back and trying to adjust to civilian life again. So I thought, boy, this is a pretty good idea. I kind of liked it, but I had a different vision of it. I thought it would be great if we had, instead of coming back to the States, be like at Schofield Barracks, in Hawaii, and we're still getting wounded people in, and we're living there and that. But somebody came up, they wanted to make it in Hannibal, Missouri, where the Colonel's Potter's place was, and then I thought, well, okay, maybe we could make this work. Soon Lee's my wife. We got the priest, Bill Christopher, and Harry. And what happened, we got a terrific rating at the first, when it aired. And then I think the writers didn't know what to do with the show. And they started bringing in these other characters instead of staying with the nucleus that they had, the people that brought them from MASH. And they brought in characters that just didn't resonate. Remember I told you, chemistry. Chemistry wasn't there. It didn't work. And the show, quite frankly, just disappeared. It lost its ratings. And it's a shame, because I really thought that it could have had something to say, as I said, like The Best Years of Our Lives. But there again, it's your luck, the guidance, the chemistry. When it's there, it works. When it doesn't matter what your story is. It's not going to make it.
Were you nervous going in that it wouldn't live up to the success
You know what?
of MASH?
I wasn't at that point in my life. I had no idea what the future held for me. I had a great run on the show. I was in demand for movies of the week and a lot of other things. And I thought, oh, well, this will be good. We'll bring that quality that I talked about, and it just wasn't there. It didn't happen. And I don't know, maybe it was because Alan Alda had so much to say, and he expressed himself. I wasn't an Alan Alda, and Harry Morgan wasn't an Alan Alda, and Bill Christopher wasn't an Alan Alda. And I wasn't about to assume, the mantle of telling people what to do when you got guys like Larry Gelbart and the other writers and Burt Metcalf, etc. It just, but sometimes you do have to speak up and maybe challenge some of your mentors even. It's a sad thing it didn't work out, but I was lucky, and whatever I got out of it, it was the friendship and the opportunity to be able to do that.
How was your role different on that show than it was on?
Well, they took the spirit out of him. That's what was one of the things he had a certain spirit about him, and they tried to make him kind of obey the head of the hospital. And instead of doing that, he shouldn't have done that. He might have done it on the surface, and faked her out a little bit, but he was still Klinger. He was still the operator, the con guy, the whatever it is. I just think got confused, got messed up, and it's unfortunate. These things happen. You know, not everybody does a hit show, and I'm sure the Academy has plenty of those to prove it.
How did you feel about Klinger being back in a dress?
I didn't want to do that. I told them I didn't like that, but they were desperate for ratings. They thought that put the guy in the dress, you know, he'll bring the ratings. It didn't do anything at all for the. I think we were on opposite the A team, and the A team was really doing great in the numbers. So, as I said, it was an adventure. It didn't work out, and that's all part of my career.
Did you have any favorite episodes or scenes like you had in MASH?
I don't recall. It wasn't on that long, and I didn't remember. I think I have some episodes. I do believe I recorded some of them. I haven't looked at them for a long time. You know, I'm kind of funny. I don't look at myself a lot on the screen. Every once in a while, I'll see someone go, "Oh, okay, I'll watch that for a little bit," but I don't really watch me.
So you mentioned a little while ago some of your game show work, so we'd like to touch on some
game
of
shows.
that.
All right. Let me tell you that when I started to get popular on MASH, then I was asked to start doing talk shows. And the very first talk show I was offered was the Merv Griffin Show. And so Joy said, you can't, my wife said, you can't just go out. You've got to have a nice new suit or something. So I said, okay. So I bought this new suit. Then I go to the Merv Griffin Show, and Burt Reynolds is one of the guests on the show, and I'm kind of nervous. I'd never been on a talk show. What are they going to ask me and everything else? And I'm in the green room, and Gabe Kaplan from Welcome Back, Kotter's in there, and I'm in there. And we can't wait to go on. He's going to do his comedy, and I'll tell stories. And so Burt Reynolds is on. We're watching the monitor, and who comes through the audience but Lee Majors? And Lee Majors and Burt are good buddies at this time. So Lee surprises Burt, and he gets on stage, and he takes up time. So now it comes down, all I got time is for one guest. And Gabe Kaplan and I are looking at each other in the green room. He's going, they're going to pick you. You're on a hit series. I go, they're going to pick you because you're a comedian, and you got Welcome Back, Kotter. They came in and they picked Gabe. So Gabe goes on, and I didn't go on the show. I came back the next day, and the cast asked me, how did it go? Because it was a tape show. I said, well, I was the only thing that went. So Burt Reynolds said to Merv, I feel terrible about this, that Jamie didn't get on. Will you have him on? So I got the call for Merv Griffin to have me on. I had to go out and buy a new suit because I didn't want to think that was the only suit I was going to wear. So I got on the Merv Griffin Show. That was my very first talk show. And I did very, very well on that. And then I was asked to start doing game shows. And the first game show I did was for Heater Quigley called the Magnificent Marble Machine. Had this big marble machine, pinball machine, and everything else. And I came on, his question answers, and then you went to the marble machine to try to win prizes and money for the contestant. Well, you do 5 of them in one day. You know, that's the whole week's show. So I did it. And I remember Merrill Heater coming, Jamie, he says, I'm going to have you on every one of my shows. You're a fantastic game show player. Well, I told you when I was a kid, I loved game shows. I used to listen to them on radio. And so I was pretty good at trivia, too, at knowing a lot of things about a lot of little things. And so I fit into a lot of the Q&A kind of shows. But then I was also the kind of personality, celebrity, you could do the participation shows. So what happened is I started doing Magnificent Marble Machine. I began to do some of the other game shows that like Password and Pyramid, which really you had to be pretty smart to do those shows. And then I began to do the participation shows. There was one that Alex Trebek had. I forgot the name of it. Then I did some other shows, word game shows. I was very good at that. And then along comes the show called The Gong Show.
Can we stop you there?
Yes,
and
you
we'll
can.
Pick
So
up
you-
when
yeah.
we change